Take a moment before you keep scrolling. Just stop for a few seconds and stay here. If this message found you today, maybe it is not as random as it seems. Maybe something inside you has been looking for answers, and somehow you arrived here at the right time. For a moment, think about that special person. Picture their face as clearly as you can. Notice how your body reacts when you do. Maybe your heart feels lighter. Maybe there is warmth mixed with longing. Maybe there is a feeling you cannot fully explain with words. That feeling is not simply confusion. It is your heart responding to something that your mind is still trying to understand. Sometimes our emotions recognize something long before our thoughts can make sense of it. This person may feel different from everyone else who has entered your life. Whether they were meant to stay forever or only teach you an important lesson, their presence has touched something deep within you. I know how exhausting it can be to carry feelings that seem bigger than the situation itself. I know what it is like to spend quiet nights thinking about someone, wondering if you are imagining the signs or hoping for something that will never happen. You question every conversation. You replay every memory. You search for meaning in moments that seem too important to ignore. Those questions are real. Those emotions are real too. Feeling deeply does not make you weak. It does not mean you are foolish or overly emotional. It simply means your heart is involved in something that matters to you. Sometimes the hardest experiences are also the ones that change us the most. Growth rarely feels comfortable while it is happening. It often feels uncertain, confusing, and even painful before we understand why it was necessary. If you have ever felt a connection that stayed in your heart even when life became complicated, you are not alone. Many people experience relationships that seem impossible to explain with simple logic. They meet someone who changes the way they think, the way they feel, and even the way they see themselves. These kinds of connections reach much deeper than ordinary attraction. They touch the parts of us that have been protected for years. They uncover old fears, old wounds, and old beliefs that we did not even realize we were carrying. Many people believe love should arrive as peace from the very beginning. They imagine it should remove all fear and make everything feel easy. But the relationships that transform us the most often begin very differently. Instead of bringing immediate comfort, they shake everything we thought we understood about ourselves. They challenge old habits. They expose emotional walls we built to protect ourselves. They force us to look at beliefs that have quietly controlled our lives for years. At first, this process can feel like everything is falling apart. It may seem as though the relationship itself is creating the pain. In reality, it is often revealing pain that was already there, hidden beneath the surface. When someone reaches parts of your heart that no one else has touched, your usual ways of protecting yourself stop working. The person who has always given everything for others may suddenly realize how tired they have become. They notice how often they ignored their own needs while trying to make everyone else happy. They begin asking themselves why they believed they had to earn love through endless patience, sacrifice, and emotional effort. That realization is painful because it challenges a belief they may have carried since childhood. Somewhere along the way, they learned that simply being themselves was not enough. They believed they had to constantly prove their worth before they deserved love. At the same time, the other person may be carrying a completely different kind of wound. Maybe they survived difficult experiences by keeping people at a distance. Maybe getting too close once led to disappointment, betrayal, or heartbreak. Over time, their mind learned to associate closeness with danger instead of safety. Because of that, whenever a relationship becomes emotionally serious, their first instinct is to step back. It is not always because they do not care. Sometimes they care so deeply that the intensity becomes overwhelming. From the outside, it can look like one person is chasing while the other keeps pulling away. It seems unfair. It seems unbalanced. But underneath those actions, both people may actually be struggling with the same fear. Both fear rejection. Both fear not being enough. Both fear losing someone they care about. They simply respond to those fears in different ways. The one who reaches out believes silence means love is disappearing. They feel responsible for holding everything together. Every unanswered message feels heavy. Every moment of distance feels like something is slipping away. Yet they eventually have to learn an important lesson. They cannot abandon themselves in order to keep someone else close. Their value is not measured by how much pain they can endure. Their worth does not depend on how much they sacrifice for another person. The one who creates distance faces a different lesson. Deep inside, they often believe that getting too close means losing their freedom, disappointing someone they love, or becoming emotionally trapped. Because of those fears, they instinctively step back whenever the connection becomes real. The distance may give temporary relief, but it rarely brings lasting peace. Instead, it often creates loneliness. It creates guilt. It creates confusion. And slowly it forces them to recognize how much the relationship actually means to them. Avoiding vulnerability may protect someone from rejection for a while, but it also prevents them from fully receiving the love they secretly want. Healing almost never looks graceful in the beginning. Sometimes healing looks like uncertainty. Sometimes it looks like emotional ups and downs. Sometimes it looks like silence while someone is trying to understand themselves. Sometimes it looks like taking 2 steps forward and 1 step back. Real growth is rarely neat. Nature reminds us of this truth again and again. A seed must break open before it becomes a tree. A caterpillar completely changes before becoming a butterfly. Every meaningful transformation begins with letting go of something old. The same thing happens within us. Old beliefs have to fade. Old fears have to lose their control. Old ways of protecting ourselves have to be replaced by healthier ones. Only then can we build relationships that are based on trust instead of fear. That is why these connections can feel so intense. They reveal the contradictions inside us. They show us how much we want love, while also showing us how afraid we are of it. They help us understand the difference between attachment and genuine love. Attachment says that another person must stay because without them, we feel incomplete. Healthy love says we want to share our lives with someone while continuing to grow into complete individuals ourselves. That change in perspective transforms everything. There is something very important that many people overlook. Every meaningful relationship eventually reaches a turning point. Most people expect that turning point to arrive through one perfect conversation or one dramatic moment. Sometimes they wait for a message. Sometimes they wait for an apology. Sometimes they wait for the other person to finally express everything they have been feeling. But often, the biggest change happens much more quietly. It begins with a decision inside your own heart. It begins when you stop waiting for someone else to choose your value. It begins when you decide to recognize your own worth regardless of what another person does. That decision changes the energy you bring into every relationship. When you stop acting from fear, you begin acting from confidence. When you stop chasing approval, you begin living with peace. When you stop believing your happiness depends on someone else's choices, you become emotionally stronger. People naturally notice that change. Not because life works like magic, but because confidence, peace, and self-respect create healthier relationships than fear, anxiety, and desperation ever can. When you stop reaching from a place of panic, you create room for honesty. You also create space for the other person to face their own feelings without constant pressure. For perhaps the first time, they are left alone with what truly exists in their heart. Not only their fears, not only their doubts, not only the reasons they have been avoiding difficult emotions, but their genuine feelings. Whatever is real has always been there. That truth deserves patience. It also deserves trust. There is something else I want you to remember. Every part of this journey has shaped you, even the waiting, even the unanswered questions, even the nights that felt endless. None of those moments were completely meaningless. I know there were times when you wondered if all your love simply disappeared into nothing. You questioned whether your kindness mattered. You questioned whether your effort changed anything. You questioned whether caring so deeply was a mistake. Those thoughts are understandable, but love leaves an impact. Every experience teaches something. Every challenge strengthens something. Every disappointment reveals something about who we are becoming. The evenings spent missing someone, the nights spent lying awake with thoughts that would not disappear. The quiet moments when your heart carried emotions it could not express. None of those experiences are empty. They shape your character. they increase your compassion. They deepen your understanding of yourself. They prepare you to recognize healthier love when it appears. Sometimes tears are not signs of weakness. Sometimes they are evidence that your heart still believes in something meaningful. Crying over someone does not automatically mean you should hold on forever. It simply shows that your emotions were genuine. Real feelings deserve respect, even when life takes unexpected directions. Many people choose to walk away the moment relationships become difficult because protecting themselves feels easier than facing uncertainty. Others remain because they believe every struggle is proof they should never let go. Neither extreme always leads to wisdom. The healthiest path is learning to care deeply while also respecting yourself. It is learning to love without losing your identity. It is learning to stay open without ignoring your own needs. It is learning that your value has never depended on another person's ability to recognize it. Whether this relationship becomes part of your future or simply becomes an important chapter in your life, the lessons you are learning today will stay with you. And those lessons may become the very foundation for the peace, confidence, and love you have been searching for all along. It would have been incredibly easy for you to simply give up on everything. You could have shut down your heart completely, built a massive wall around your emotions, and decided that loving another human being this deeply was just far too expensive and painful for you to handle. So many people in this world get hurt repeatedly, or they find themselves left waiting in the dark for so long. Eventually, those people just go completely quiet and they close themselves off from the world because the emotional price of caring feels far too high to pay. You had every single reason in the world to make that exact same choice for yourself, and nobody would have blamed you at all if you had chosen to protect yourself by becoming cold. Yet, despite all of that pain, you decided to stay open when closing your heart would have been the much easier path to take. You chose to stay completely soft and gentle when hardening your heart was right there in front of you as a very simple option. We live in a world that constantly rewards people for being guarded, cold, and detached from their feelings. In a world like that, your absolute refusal to go down that dark route is a form of immense quiet power. It is not a weakness or a vulnerability at all to keep your heart open when everything hurts. To love another person completely without calculating what you will get in return is an incredibly rare quality. It is a beautiful trait that very few people possess in this life, and it is exactly the kind of strong foundation from which a deep and lasting love is built. You chose to stay in this vulnerable space, to truly feel everything, and to keep caring deeply when everything around you was giving you a perfect reason to close the door forever. That choice is absolutely everything, and it shows the true strength of your character. It is an amazing thing to love someone through all of the confusion and through all of the heavy distance. It takes so much strength to hold love through those difficult seasons where absolutely nothing is clear and the heavy silence stretches on for weeks or months. To do all of that without becoming a bitter, angry, or resentful person takes something special. It requires a deep inner strength that cannot be faked by anyone, and it cannot be learned from the outside world. You either have that beautiful capacity inside your soul, or you do not have it at all. You clearly have that capacity inside you, and that is not a small or minor thing about your personality. It might actually be the most important and beautiful thing about who you are as a human being. It is precisely this rare quality that is currently leading you somewhere very real and meaningful. You are not being guided toward a painful relationship that will keep you permanently off balance. You are not headed toward a connection where you must always try to read between the lines just to understand what is happening. You will not have to spend your life always wondering where you stand with the person you love, and you will not have to live your life always bracing yourself for the next painful moment of uncertainty or rejection. You are absolutely not moving toward a love that makes you feel like your emotions are somehow too large or too heavy for the space you have been given by your partner. Instead, you are headed directly towards something that fits you perfectly. You are going toward a love that does not require you to manage yourself down or dim any bright part of who you are. You are moving toward a love that feels exactly the way a deep breath feels after you have been holding heavy tension in your chest for way too long. That description is not a poetic exaggeration or just pretty words to make you feel better. That is genuinely and truly where this journey is going for you if you keep doing what is necessary for your own well-being. So what does that actually look like when you put it into practice in your daily life? What do you need to do today, tomorrow, and in all the days that follow with all of this emotional energy? Here is the most important and most difficult thing of all, and I am not going to soften this truth or make it sound simpler than it actually is. You must turn toward yourself deliberately and consciously with real intention. You cannot do this as a mere performance of moving on from the situation, and you cannot do this as a way of signaling something to the other person or playing some kind of long psychological game to win them over. You must do it genuinely and honestly for yourself. You need to redirect all of the energy you have been spending outward on others, and you must bring that energy back home to yourself, where it belongs. You need to start asking yourself a question that maybe you have not asked in a very long time, a question that feels almost strange and unfamiliar in your mouth at first. You need to ask yourself what you actually need right now in this very moment. You should stop asking what the other person needs from you. You must stop wondering what you could do, say, or become that might finally shift things between the two of you. You must stop agonizing over what would make them come back, open up, or finally understand your heart. Instead, you must focus entirely on what you need to feel safe and happy. You need to look at what would feel truly good to you today. Think about what part of your own life you have been neglecting because you were so intensely focused on something that was always slightly out of your reach. You need to start filling those empty places in your life right now. You must start saying yes to yourself with at least a fraction of the enthusiasm you have been using to say yes to everyone else. Think about all the things you put off for later because you were waiting for your life to feel more settled or waiting for a relationship to become real first. You need to start doing some of those things right now without waiting for anyone else. Think about the friendships you let drift away a little bit because your emotional energy was completely focused somewhere else. You need to reach back towards some of those wonderful people who truly care about you and want to see you happy. Think about the unique parts of yourself that you put away on a high shelf because you were so absorbed in this complicated situation. You need to take those parts back down, and you must dust them off carefully. None of this advice is about pretending that the love is not there in your heart, and none of it is about forcing yourself to feel something you do not feel or trying to stop feeling something you do feel. It is simply about expanding your life back out to its full and natural size so that you are not living in a tiny, cramped space built entirely around one single person and one specific outcome. There is a beautiful thing that happens when you genuinely start doing that for yourself. Something major shifts in how you carry yourself through the world. It is not a dramatic or loud overnight change, and it is much quieter than that, but it is completely real. You stop feeling like an incomplete sentence that is constantly waiting for its ending to be written by someone else. You stop feeling like you are trapped in a permanent holding pattern in the sky. You stop believing that your life cannot fully begin until this one particular thing resolves itself. You finally start feeling like a whole person. You feel like someone whose life has real weight, beautiful color, and powerful forward movement regardless of what any one relationship is or is not doing on any given day. That wonderful feeling of groundedness is everything. That deep sense of being rooted firmly in your own existence, rather than being suspended in someone else's uncertainty, changes your entire presence. The people all around you will begin to feel it in ways they might not even be able to put into words. There is a special quality to someone who is genuinely at home in their own skin, and it is magnetic in the truest sense of the word. It naturally draws good things toward it rather than constantly chasing after them. The person you have been loving through all of this confusion will feel it too. They will feel that profound difference more than anyone else will because they are connected to your energy. This is absolutely not a strategy or a mind trick, and it is important to be really clear about that because this should never be used as some kind of clever technique for getting a particular outcome from someone else. It is not a game to make them miss you. It is simply the absolute truth of what happens when a person stops relating to another human being from a place of deep lack and starts relating from a place of beautiful fullness. The whole dynamic between two people begins to breathe differently when one person stands on their own 2 feet. There is suddenly real room for something genuine to happen that could never happen before when you were both caught in a cycle of anxiety and distance. Now we should talk about them for a moment because there is something important that you might need permission to understand deeply. They are not the bad person in any of this situation, even though it feels that way sometimes. There have probably been many painful moments where the hurt made it very tempting to see them as the villain. There were times where the distance, the silence, or the inconsistency made you want to write a cleaner and simpler story where someone is clearly completely in the wrong. But they are not a cold or unfeeling person. And they are not someone who is simply indifferent to your existence or your love. What you have been reading as cold distance is actually something much more complicated and painful than that.